New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announced on our show yesterday morning that New York City public schools will return to full-time, in-person learning in the fall without a remote option. Across the country, Los Angeles public schools will start the school year next fall with in-person learning while also offering an online option. The announcement comes as emergency pandemic guidelines that have allowed districts to operate online expire at the end of June. The superintendent of Los Angeles schools said middle and high school students would have a normal full-time schedule and after-school programs would be available until 6 p.m. on school days. Students who do not want to attend the traditional in-person schedule will have a remote option that will be mostly online. The superintendent said safety measures were still being worked on, but most likely social distancing would be relaxed while mask wearing would continue. Willie.
Now to the state of New Jersey, where Governor Phil Murphy announced yesterday he will roll back the mandatory indoor mask rules for those who are fully vaccinated. And Governor Murphy joins us now. Governor, good morning. It's good to see you. You obviously frustrated some people, I guess, 10 or 11 days ago when you said we're going to stick with these indoor masks despite the new CDC guidance at the federal level. What changed since then for you to say this Memorial Day weekend, people in New Jersey who are vaccinated can take off those masks inside?
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Willie. I think one of the persons I frustrated until was yourself. Listen, more time on the clock here in a pandemic is your ally. We just weren't ready to lift that mandate on May 13th. But if you look at the progress we've made, even in the past 10 days or so, viral numbers going down, hospitalizations, positivity rates, et cetera, rate of transmission, and that it allowed us further to push out our vaccine program. We've got something called Operation Jersey Summer that had just taken hold. We've now got a bunch of programs, including knocking on folks' doors in under-vaccinated communities. That time on the clock has been really valuable. So as of this Friday, the amount of time between May 13th and May 28th, we were able to make a lot of progress on both the viral numbers going in the down direction and the vaccine numbers going up.
So what are, Governor Murphy, the exact numbers you're looking at in terms of vaccinations? One of the things we talked about last week when we were discussing this is that New Jersey's actually done pretty well in terms of vaccination. I think you're close to 60% having at least one dose. So are those numbers significantly greater today than they were a couple of weeks ago?
They are. I mean, by several hundred thousand. In fact, we're over 70% now in terms of one dose. And that's a big deal. We want to get to everybody fully vaccinated, Willie, by the end of June. So we've got a really aggressive program out there. I think among big states, it's about as penetrated a program as you'll see. We still have a lot of work to do on the equity front. We're making progress in black and brown communities, but we have a ways to go. I mentioned that door knocking campaign. Yesterday, for instance, that was in Trenton, Camden, Passaic City, Jersey City, Bayonne. Those are overwhelmingly communities of color. That's where we have the most work to do.
As you say, we can't go back. I think anyone who lives in the state of New Jersey would agree with you that you wanted to be somewhat tempered in the way you got back into it. I didn't think this was going to survive to Memorial Day weekend at the Jersey Shore, and I guess I was right about that part at least. But what are you looking at in terms of keeping this where it is right now? Because when these masks come off, I'm sure you'll be watching perhaps a little bit nervously to see how things go. They've gone pretty well in places like Texas, New York so far. What will you be watching for in terms of keeping the rates of hospitalizations and down and vaccination up?
Yeah, I mean, we'll continue to watch the public health metrics like a hawk. So that's positivity rate, rate of transmission, hospitalizations, the amount of folks in a hospital who are severely ill. We'll look at the so-called Cali scores. We regionalize our state, so we've got a whole color-coded set of metrics. We'll keep our ear to the ground on any outbreaks. We'll continue to enforce any violations of this, although there's not much left to violate. But we will stay very, very close to this because you're right. We are one of the very few states in America that did not lurch. We did not, stumble forward and then have to pull something back. The last thing we want to do right now is to go back.
Governor, I think people need to remember that education is primarily a state and local responsibility. I'd like you to speak for a minute about what you have planned to deal with those students who just tuned out for a year, who didn't have the support at home, who didn't really keep up with their education over this past year. This is a huge problem that you're facing as public schools reopen in the fall. How are you going to deal with it in New Jersey?
Yeah, good to see you, Clara. It is a big challenge for us, as it is for any state. And it's of particular importance for us because we have the #1 rated public education system in America. We view that as a crown jewel in our state. So right now, about 92% of our kids are either in hybrid or full in person. We fully expect we'll be at 100% in person in the fall. But we have taken a significant amount of the federal monies that we had already received and put them up against both learning loss programs, after school, professional development for our educators, summer programs, as well as monies into mental health programs, given the enormous amount of stress. We'll continue to do that, I would suspect, with the American Rescue Plan money. So not that money or resources is the only answer, but I think the budget does speak of priorities, and this is a big one. You're absolutely right. The learning loss is real. In some cases, it's enormous. Again, it's an equity issue. The loss is steeper in Black and brown communities than on average in our state, and we'll do everything we can to get our kids back up to par.
Governor, this is Gene Robinson. I want to stick with that general topic for a second. What are you telling parents who themselves might be vaccinated, but whose children are too young to be vaccinated now, and who might have some degree of lingering concern about sending them back to school, sending them back into that environment, and even though we all know the numbers, but what do you say to those parents to reassure them?
Yeah, Gina, good to see you as well. I mean, a rightful concern, #1. #2, we'll put guidance out. My guess is next month for what school looks like in the fall. We've got a very good early take up in the 12 to 15-year-old cohort, which is the newest cohort able to get a vaccine. As we all know, we don't have a vaccine yet, although there are vaccines in trials for the under 12-year-olds. My guess is, as a result of that, if I had to bet today, that we'll have masking in schools in the fall as a result of that.